1, 2, 3, microphone test.
4, 5, 6, 7, microphone works.
We can hear you.
And thanks for the reminder that we are arriving at the top of the hour. Given that people are still coming in, let's give it a few more moments. But other than that, I'll start. So Ira is usually showing up for these meetings too, given that he's provided a lot of feedback. I'll wait for. Oh, here we are. Okay, let's get started. This is an interim meeting of the CBOR working group. Welcome, everyone. You all know how this works. The note well applies. And we have an agenda for today that is mostly about items that Carsten has been working on. Is there anything that is not on the in the agenda in the minutes that someone wants to bring up that we should allocate time for? Marco?
Hi, I may use just a few minutes to a quick hint on using what's proposed in the CBOR document into an ACE document, but that can definitely be in the end.
Okay, making a note of the minutes. Although this might be part of what Carsten also covers in his slides, but that note being made, Carsten, I think you have slides. So I'd say you get started, and then we'll see what there is to discuss.
Yeah, I'm going through the slide process at the moment. Okay, so when I saw that this meeting was coming up, I wasn't quite sure which parts of the landscape we would be working on. So I just took the slides from the last interim before 119, which essentially mentioned all the documents we are working on, and that's more than 20 actually, and put in updates where these documents have moved in some way. So some of these slides will be really quick, but they are also an opportunity to ask questions. So please stop me when I'm running through something too fast. Okay, so there are several official working group documents in some late state of processing, and there is still one document in the RFC editor queue, the CBOR time tag, and the day before yesterday, the companion document, which already has an RFC number 9557, that updates RFC 3339. That actually went through the auth 48 process, so it has completed auth 48 process and should be published any day now. So this is good because it probably will motivate the RFC editor to move this document out of the RFC editor state into the auth 48 state, and then we can do the same thing with the time tag document. So that's the approved documents. On the list of documents that are in ISG now, actually we have none. We do have 3 documents that are in a working group last call comments completed state and could be handed off to the ISG. I think the EDN literals and the update 8610 grammar documents are actually in a state where we could do this. And then we have more control, and we probably want to talk about more control in the next couple of slides. But first,
Yes.
Any comments on the other documents?
Just a brief note from me on EDN and CDDL. Yes, those are on me finishing up the shepherd write-up.
Good. So Ori is listening on the chat. I'm sure he is just really interested in getting some output from this working group to work on. So I think it would be nice to move forward with those. Let's go to the more control document. Again, this has completed working group last call, but we didn't have a lot of feedback at the time, and one pretty unanimous item of feedback was to get rid of the tags for, not tags, the control operators for deterministically formatted CBOR, and do those in the CDE draft. So this is already in -04. And the current discussion is based on an experiment that Lawrence is doing, where he is trying to rewrite parts of the EAT CDL, the entity attestation token or something like that, a RATS document, and that uses CDDL a lot, but it uses the version of CDDL without these control operators. So it's interesting to see what we can win. And Lawrence has made several comments about the strictness requirements. We probably should say in a little bit more detail how strict these control operators are. So which parts of 46, 48, which is the underlying reference to all these base 64 and so on formats, which parts do you really have to fulfill and which ones are optional? We also have strict and sloppy variants of these. So we need to be a little bit more explicit about what how the strictness actually works. Lawrence has brought this up, and unfortunately I didn't have time to generate a PR yet, but this will probably happen in the next 24 hours. And I think it's clear what we want to do there. We want to have a strict validation. It doesn't really make sense to have lots of sloppiness, except for this particular aspect that we identified, where there actually are specifications that are telling us that they don't care about the unused bits. These are essentially don't care positions. And the strict interpretation, of course, should be that the unused bits all need to be 0. So this needs to be, the other things about being sloppy need to be made explicit. So I think I know what we want to do there. The other question about .join. .join is a pretty powerful mechanism, and it's not easy to implement it in the widest possible way. We do not really expect in CDDL that implementations always cover the entire gamut of specifications that can be written. I mean, the CDDL is culturally derived from ABNF, which is a BNF format, and of course BNF grammars are notoriously difficult to implement completely. But most people who write grammars know what they should avoid, like left recursion and things like that. I think this is not out of character, but Lawrence is of course right that the current text there is not sufficient. That's another place where a PR needs to be written. Here, I think it's a bit more open what the contents of the PR should be. Again, the generation part of .join is easy because you have all the parts and can put them together. Validation is the inverse situation, where you have the whole thing and need to split it into the parts. And that's not something that the join operator tells you how to do. So it's a little bit like RSA, and when you do generation, you have the prime factors, and when you do validation, you have the product and need to find the prime factors. Fortunately, it's a little bit simpler to solve. So there are two implementation strategies that come to mind. One is actually currently implemented. That's the strategy number one here. And another one is also possible, and I want to implement this before we actually create this PR. So that's why it's not there yet. So typically these .join control sides have constant values, constant strings in them. So that, for instance, the example in the specification has 4 decimal numbers and dots, 3 dots between them. So these are essentially markers, and I think most useful ways of building things with join will use those markers. So the implementation recommendation could be to just implement scanning for these markers and using that as the basis for the validation. So there are some limits to that. Of course, you can write joins that are really hard to interpret, in particular if you don't have at least one marker between any two variable elements, then it becomes complicated. Another way to do this that actually may be less code, because it just buries the implementation complexity into the regex mechanism. You actually can build parsing regex out of the markers and possibly even out of the variable element. So if you know that a variable element is built using the control operator .decimal, then you know that you have to look for digits. So that's another strategy, and maybe that's the one that I would actually recommend, because, well, it's more than 10 lines of code to do the constant scanning, and the regex part will probably be much simpler. So again, I want to try this out, and if it works as well as I'm thinking, this is probably the text that should go there. So that's where I think we are with the more control document. And Christian, maybe you want to read aloud what you wrote in the chat.
Yeah, it would have been more important if point is, the working group last call was not completed yet, but it just ran out of time with insufficient comments, but that was therefore extended. And with the input that came in during that extended period, I think now that we have consensus on this, on publishing this document, provided that the things that are coming up during that are addressed, which obviously they are being so. Looking good, and AJ has volunteered to be shepherd for this document, and I'll work on that with him.
Good. So any more discussion points on more control? Then I'll continue my scan through the other documents. The modules document needs some work, in particular in the handling of sockets, but there are also concerns from Brendan that I think we need to discuss more. We don't want to do this for a long time, but the socket issue is somewhat blocking right now, and we probably want to come up with a simple way to solve this, and this needs to be written up, and it also needs to be implemented to see whether it actually works. So this will definitely happen in the next couple of weeks, and I hope we can then continue the process on modules. What's that? Okay. The slides update very slowly. There are a number of ancillary documents that are out there that can be used that probably don't require updates right now, but probably will be updated during the course of the time between this IETF and the Vancouver IETF. I listed them here, so if you have any specific items you want to put in there, please tell us. Then we have a new, relatively new draft that discusses the usage of the application-oriented literals extension point for solving a problem in writing specifications with code points that haven't been assigned yet. So first of all, there is a general draft out there, CBOR draft numbers, that gives a general procedure of doing that. But this general procedure still has examples that are littered with assumed assignments, and that is of course always very toxic, because those examples will diffuse out of the specification into some implementations, and then we are essentially squatting on numbers, and this is not what we should do. So I propose using the application-oriented literals mechanism to solve this problem with examples, and that is written up in draft form in CBOR EREF 00. And Marco was kind enough to try using this mechanism in draft IETF ACE OSCOR GM admin. He did this in a way that he doesn't really have to wait for the draft, the EREF draft to go through, because he essentially wrote up the important points once more, so there won't be a normative reference. So we are not running into a time constraint here. But I think it's good to see what happens when you try to use this. And yeah, maybe Marco has some comments about this.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I did, and that was the point I wanted to raise that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. You can find an actual PR number 6, but I can also put a link in the chat here.
It's on the slide.
Oh, didn't notice. Right. Yeah, it was mostly intended for addressing non-editorial working group last call comments from Karsten on that document, and one of the main ones was about using that notation. I took that in 2 steps. First, I was just very biased by the guiding example in the CBOR draft. Then I got feedback to preferably not have a hybrid approach where that notation is used also for code points that are registered already. Someone finds preferable to have those code points indicated as registered, accompanied by comments, just to clarify in line what they are, what they mean. So neither is wrong, of course. It may be a matter of taste, but a second take I had on the ACE document was to avoid the hybrid approach. So I'm using this new notation only for code points that are indeed still to be registered. And I think the experiment was successful. I like the approach. I'm using it already for another document in ACE as part of addressing the IETF last call comments. The document is ACE revoked token notification, and there is a PR that, among other things and other editorial fixes, takes care of this too. I'll provide the links in the minutes. And I support this work. Thanks.
So you're using the same trick there by just defining this feature in the text of the document.
Yes, I made minor rephrasing to that early boilerplate, but I think this is the way to go for a while until the document is, let's say, approved or something.
Okay.
So I'd like to pick up on that. we've had a bit of positive feedback already during the IETF 119. Hearing Marco now, I think that's a good point now to start a working group adoption call on the list. Thank you.
Good. On the CBOR draft numbers document, this is designed in such a way that you never reference it from an RFC. So it doesn't matter which state the document has, because you can use it in the internet draft stage. It's slightly weird in the ISG stage, because we know we will delete the text, but we keep it in. Even though it would be a downref if we actually were using that reference. I'm just wondering whether this should be a working document to make this slightly more legit. But there's no rush to do that. So if people want to have another look at the document and see whether this could be a working document, again, I don't think we actually need to publish this as an RFC. We could, but we don't have to. Because it goes away as soon as the IN assignments have been made. Good. We have the pact work, and I see Mikola is in the conference. Not that much has happened since 119. But we certainly want to pick up speed on that one as well. There is the notable tags document, which is slowly moving forward. Don't think we have a high priority, because we mostly need this as a stable reference for certain tags and as a roadmap to the tag landscape. Then we have the serialization discussion, which we probably don't want to continue today, because we don't have everyone in the meeting. But yeah, that also has to be finished, and we finally need to decide what we want to do with the CBOR document, the third one on the list. And there is a new tag 201 that we probably need to discuss, because right now we don't have a really good understanding of the interaction between tags and encoding decisions, serialization decisions. And I think we need to understand the architecture of doing this first. The tag itself is pretty trivial, but it's not clear that it actually can have the semantics that it right now seems to have. So that's a discussion we have to do, but maybe not today. Okay, then we have several application documents. We have DNS CBOR, which is a compact representation of DNS information. We have the Yang stand-in documents, which is essentially a proof of concept at this point in time. So there is some editorial work needed, but I think the technical substance here is pretty stable. What we do need to understand is, since this is actually changing the way Yang is represented in CBOR, where are the places where you would possibly convert between these two representations, and how do you find out that the next hop in the Yang processing chain actually understands this functionality? So that's something that really requires some more technical discussion. But I think everybody who wants to use Yang in constrained environments or in environments that have very high performance requirements wants these binary data types. So tag 1 would be a timestamp, and tags 52 and 54 are IP addresses. IPv4 and IPv6. The other thing that is going on with CBOR Yang at the moment is that Andy Bierman mentioned that it would be good to have support for metadata annotations in Yang CBOR. That metadata annotations are described in RFC 7952. So that's part of this series. 7950 is Yang, 7951 is Yang JSON, and 7952 is Yang metadata annotations for Yang XML and Yang JSON. So this is a feature that is rarely used probably doesn't have its main usage in the constraint space, but the applications that need high performance probably need this. There is an XML representation that is really trivial because it's just about adding attributes to certain XML tags. So that's very simple. But translating that to a more data structure-oriented representation like JSON turned out to be difficult. So 7952 has a rather complicated way of representing the annotations. And the question was, should this be copied on the CBOR side? And the answer is no, because we have everything that is needed to replicate the simplicity of the XML version. The discussion is actually going on in an issue on the Yang CBOR document, but there's also a draft, and the draft essentially takes the existing Yang CBOR representation. The first pair of braces is a map that would define the value or give the value for SID 61600, which is the sum of the reference SID and the delta given as a map key. And now if we want to put metadata in there, we can simply encapsulate the instance representation in a tag. I'm suggesting to use 109 here. And the tag has as contents an array with two elements. The first one would be the metadata, and the second one would be the original instance representation. And that is really the technical substance of this document. So it's really easy to do this in CBOR. And now we need to understand whether this approach actually covers all bases or whether there's a special case that is not covered. The current draft is not yet submitted. It's in a GitHub repository. You can find more in this issue I had on the previous slide. Yeah, we have to check that. And when we think it's technically sound, we will submit -00. And of course, as usual, the question will be which working group would we submit this in? Originally, Yang CBOR was done in the core working group because there was no other group to do this in. I think we have a common sentiment here that we want to do further work in the CBOR working group, in particular when it's really about the CBOR representation. And I temporarily labeled this as draft author CBOR, but we have to discuss this. And of course, when I announce this draft, I will announce it in netmod as well, because that's actually the working group that has defined what Yang metadata annotation are. So this is a heads up.
When we move parts of the Yang CBOR work from core here, are there people in core we can like carry over a bit, because I'm not sure we have the full required Yang expertise here to, like, frankly, I have no clue what these Yang metadata are.
Yeah, I had no clue either until Andy told me about it. So Andy is one of these people we need here, but there are other people that are using Yang CBOR in various places, and so we have to identify them and make sure they get personal invitations to look at this work when we announce it. Okay, if that is all the feedback on the Yang metadata, you haven't read the draft yet, in particular because it's not even a draft, it's just a GitHub repository. But if you care about Yang, that might be a good thing. Michael says we probably need a Yang CBOR roadmap wiki page. That's not a bad idea. So we could use the Yang CBOR repository and put a wiki page there. Good point. Okay, last slide. We have a few things that are happening outside the CBOR working group. One is RFC 9542, which was published just last week, and which is BCP 141 now. There are tons of formats for various things we need to interwork with IEEE 802 specifications. And of course, the most important one here is the MAC address, but there are also OUIs and other things. And the revision of this document, this was originally RFC 7042, the revision of this document adds CBOR tags for MAC addresses and OUIs. So these have been discussed, and this has now been published. So if you ever need to put a MAC address into a protocol, you know where to find those CBOR tags, and I will update notable tags in time to actually have this reference as well. And in the core working group, we are working on a CBOR representation of the URI data model called CRIs. And this is ongoing. It's really technically pretty stable now, but there are a few draft presentation issues, and we had a registry for the integer representation of a URI scheme that used negative numbers. We have converted this to unsigned numbers, and that created a few changes in the draft, and we are working on test vectors right now. So this is ongoing, but it will certainly be visible to the CBOR working group when we go into working Rust core. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Carsten. There is one thing I'd like to jump in with right away on the CBOR topic, on the Yang CBOR topic. While this is fresh in everyone's memory, could I have a show of hands for who feels familiar enough with Yang to review Yang CBOR stuff here? Just that I get a bit of an impression of like how much external expertise we'll need.
Yeah, so in the past, we essentially have gotten a lot of good comments at the directorate and ISG stage, because I mean, when the Yang world is very large and it's a bit complicated because there are several organizations which are not always sharing the same objectives here. So yes, we have to go outside to get the Yang side of these documents right. We also have to get the CBOR side right, and I think we can do this in this working group.
Yeah. So the concluding the show of hands with 1 raised and 4 explicitly not raised hands. Yes, we definitely need that input. So if we want to have the document in here, we'll have to be sure that the people that can provide that input are here. Otherwise, I think it's easier to go the other way around and just review the CBOR on that config they'll have it. Other questions, comments on basically everything Carsten talked about so far? Hearing nothing, I think we can cut this short here. Thanks, Carsten, for providing all the updates. Thank you, Marco, for your test implementation and for trying things out and for working with in the minutes here. And to everyone else, I'll see you in 4 weeks, because in 2 weeks there will be a holiday in most of the world. So there will not be an interim in 2 weeks from now. Thank you, and have a nice morning, evening, wherever you live. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.